Well, I know we have some stuff to talk about.
Yes.
So I'm super excited about this. I'm a sales guy at heart. You
Yeah.
know? And we've talked about this many a time.
Mm-hmm.
Very different sales styles and industries.
Mm-hmm.
But I've really enjoyed hearing your talks on deal negotiation.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And that's been a really valuable thing for our clients.
Mm-hmm.
I think learning how to do that, because you can find all the deals that you want in the world, but if you don't know how to negotiate them and make the sale happen, you know, and know people, right, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess like I want to talk about some of those things, ask some questions, maybe get like, it sounds like there's a very different way you do it than that's maybe the industry standard. Would you say that's true?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think
like
so.
Good
I think
people probably do similar.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I think what I do, because I took multiple sales training courses to get better at sales.
Okay.
And so I think one of the things I see so many people miss out on, and why I'm able to buy houses more than a lot of people, like if you put me and you up on a house, so you have sales experience, but maybe with a house, maybe you won't as much. But if probably you put like us two up against a house, I would probably, and everything else was, our offer was the same. I would probably be able to walk out of there with a contract.
Yeah.
And most of the time,
that makes sense.
I'm able to walk out with a contract probably lower than the other person's asking, just because I was able to build the rapport and set the expectations and figure out the pain points. And so, where I was going with that though, is I see a lot of people, they don't have a process. They don't have a system to negotiate with people.
They're just going in like, I'm trying to get the lowest price.
Yeah.
And I'm going to charm my way into getting to say yes.
Yeah. Just here's my number, and like,
take it or leave it.
And some people, like, I think my biggest problem was, and I was always pretty good at it. And then when I coupled it with actually learning like a sales process and I kind of created my own through a couple different programs, but, I'm now really, really great at it. So I was good at it just because of my natural like charisma and charm, where I felt like I could go and I could win the person over. Yeah. But then setting that up with, hey, what are some really good questions to ask? What are some ways to uncover pain points? Then it kind of took off in that sales process. So
that's cool. So, walk me through, for context, because I've never walked a house or seen a negotiation start to finish. Yeah. Let's say you're like, oh, I like this deal. This deal was just sent to me. I'm going to go through the negotiation process with the seller. Walk me through start to finish, A to Z, to the point where you have the contract in hand, you're walking out. Yes.
First of all, can you hand me my phone? Because I don't want to miss any. I have it written down on my phone. I don't want to miss like anything on this.
Yeah. Well, this is kind of one of those granular topics too. That you can give some go-to. So I like that.
So the first thing that I would say as I'm pulling this up though, is this is for direct to seller. Like a lot of the tips and tricks could be used with a wholesaler, with an agent, but this is specifically kind of formulated when you are
like direct mail.
When you direct mail, a cold call, a friend connects you with the seller of a house. Like this is when you're negotiating with the seller and not necessarily a wholesaler or real estate agent.
Right. Because the wholesaler would have it under contract and you're like, they're trying to make money. It's already under contract at a certain point.
Yes.
Right. So there's not much wiggle room or negotiating that needs to happen.
Exactly. So this is for direct to seller. It's not for wholesalers, for real estate agency, though a lot of tactics can be used for that. And I do want to give a balancing statement with this. This is to get to me, what would I say? Like, with great power comes great responsibility.
I get it. So you don't want to take advantage of people with this skill set.
Yeah.
And like weasel somebody out of something and take them for a low price that's actually not.
Yes.
Is that kind of where you're heading with that?
Yeah, exactly. So like one of the things I think of is what's that movie with Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Twins.
Yeah. Where they're like both birthed out of the same place, but they're complete. One's good, one's evil. So like negotiation and manipulation, I feel like go hand in hand, and one can be in a negotiation process. There is a winner and a winner, like you and the seller typically win. In manipulation, there's a winner and a loser.
Yeah.
And so when you're negotiating with the seller, like you just have to be ethical. And I know I've said that 100 times on this podcast, and I'll say it 100 times more, where you just have to be ethical with it.
Yeah.
But I still think that there are ways with negotiation where you can figure out what is the true reason that this seller needs to sell, and use that to get it at the price that you need it at. And so, but negotiation is very, very important. And so, like the process looks like for us, and I'll run through kind of the process, and then we can break each step down into a little bit more. But the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to establish the decision makers.
Okay.
Like somebody calls in off of a direct mail campaign that we're doing, or somebody fills out a web lead form and we call them, like, we're trying to figure out, hey, are you the decision maker on this? And one of the reasons for that is because we want to be negotiating with the decision maker. We don't want to negotiate with the person that is like, well, yeah, that's cool, but my dad is actually the one that's selling the house. I just reached out. That's a waste of our time to go to the house, to walk the house. So we just want to know who the decision makers are. And sometimes, like in the direct to seller world, that you're not going to be with the decision maker. The decision maker lives in Florida, and you're meeting the son at the house, and you can't do anything about it. But if we can, we want to figure out who the decision maker is and have them be at that appointment with us. Okay. So we can negotiate with them versus, hey, I'm talking to you, and then you're talking to your dad, and then he's talking back to you, and then you're talking to me. Like, I just want to be in direct contact with the decision maker.
Sure.
So that is the very first step. The second thing is I want to establish the rules and the expectations. And typically this is on the phone before we even go on that appointment is, hey, I'm coming, like my business is to buy houses. My business is to buy houses, rehab them, sell them, or keep them as a rental. But I do buy houses. Yeah. And so we tell people that, where it's like, we want to know, are you serious about selling your house? Because my goal today is to come walk your house, give you a fair offer. One of the things that we want to put when we're establishing the rules and expectations, we want to solve any of the problems that you have that you're worried about with selling a house. But if we can do all that, if we can give you the offer that you want, we can solve any of your problems that you have, like that comes with selling. Are you willing to sell your house today? Yeah. And so you're establishing the expectations of, if I can come and I can fulfill on X, Y, and Z, then I'm leaving that house with a contract. Yeah. So we're establishing rules and expectations. The next part, and this is where you kind of get to use your charisma and your charm, is
that's good. I like that.
Establishing trust, and you're providing an agenda, which kind of go hand in hand, because providing an agenda establishes trust. Where I know there was a study done that when like people are way more authentic and like meetings when you sit down, and they're way more trusting in meetings when you sit down and you say, hey, here's the meeting agenda. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. It creates a better atmosphere for the meetings, and people have trust in that meeting. It is, exactly. It's a container.
It's like, okay. Yeah.
So same thing with this, where it's like, hey, I'm going to provide an agenda. So here's what's going to happen. And this is usually before we go to the house or when I get to the house, like, can I just tell you how this goes? Typically show up, and I'm going to walk the house, and we're going to start on the outside, and I'm going to take pictures. They don't go anywhere. They just stay for me. And I'll ask you some questions about the house. And then what'll happen is I'll probably step out to my car for 10 minutes. I'll put together some numbers, and then I'll give you an offer. Does that sound good to you? And
that's awesome. Yes. So literally it's called in sales, setting the frame. Yeah. That's what we call that. So it's like, hey, thanks so much. Like, it looks like you scheduled on my call today, or you scheduled to chat about possibly, growing your business, looking at, improving your relationships, whatever it is, right? They're like, yeah. You're like, cool. Well, I'll just let you know how these calls typically go. Just have a bunch of questions for you. We can't help everybody, right? There's some people we just can't really do much for based on where they're at. I want to really get to know you, unpack what's going on in your life, any problems, sticking points. Really helps if you're honest. Yeah. And then if we see it's a good fit, then I can explain, what that could look like, possibly receiving outside help from us. Does that sound good? They're like, yes, set the frame. now people are like, oh, cool. I have expectation for you to ask me questions. I feel comfortable because your goal literally is not to sell me. It's to come up with something that could benefit me, you know, at that point. It's like, yeah.
Exactly. And one of the things that I like, because I do this a lot in these conversations, I either ask, like, does that sound good? Or I ask the question, does that make sense?
Yes.
Where it's like they can say yes. They're giving me some feedback, and they're just providing, like, when they say yes, then it means that I'm probably getting closer and closer to having
it's a trial. What they call it, a trial close almost. It's like trial yeses. Yeah.
So anyway, like, establish trust, provide an agenda. And then part of that is now we're like walking the house. And so I want to just build rapport with the seller. And so this is kind of the trust part too, where and I'm not going to dive into this, but I really enjoy using the disc to build rapport. I think we've talked about that before.
Well, the way you sell a C, it's going to be way different.
Yes, exactly. And right? I'll do a 60 set, like, and I'm not going to dive into how to determine what people are and where they're at on the scale. But there's hours and hours. But like a high D is a dominant trait. Those are people that are going to want to win. And so, like, I'm just kind of, and they also want their ego flattered. And so, like, with a high D, I'm realizing that, and I'm asking them questions about themselves. I'm asking them questions about their careers, and, you know, flattering their ego. With high I, it's all about, like, I just want to be their best friend, and we're talking about the weather, the sports, or traveling, and
cracking some jokes and stuff. Yeah.
With a high S, they're more sentimental, and I'm talking about their family and things that they loved about the house, and like, just diving into that. And with a high C, they're analytical, and so it's more like cut and dry, and it's pretty boring conversations, but I'm just trying to establish trust where I can, building rapport with the seller where I can, as we're walking in the house, as we're looking at the house. That's what I'm doing. And so when you do it enough, you can read people really well, and like, hey, this is how I need to talk to this person. You know, with you, I'm going to talk different than with somebody else, just because of who you are versus how somebody else is. And so establishing trust and providing an agenda. And while you're doing that, this is important. And this is kind of the next step, I would say, is you want to extract the pain points. Okay. And really, pain points is kind of in the real estate industry is just a way of saying, like, extracting the problems from the seller.
Why are you wanting to sell the place?
Yes. Why are you wanting to sell the place? Or why are you not wanting to sell the place? Or why do you kind of want to sell it, but why can't you sell it? So, like, trying to figure out all of the pain points. And so some of the pain points would be like money. Some of the pain points would be, we're going through a divorce and we need to sell it. Or, hey, some of them are obvious, like my dad died and the house is empty and we need to sell it. Some are a little bit harder to find.
Fixes, can't afford the fixes. Another money thing.
Yes. Or, hey, one of the ones that I just heard, this was now probably 3 or 4 months ago, was my son just got a scholarship down in Tennessee, and we're going to move down there to watch all of his games. And so we need to sell our house quick, and we don't have time to fix it up. So you're just trying to figure out pain points.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that I firmly do believe is that if you can solve the seller's problems, the house is yours. So that is the key point. If you can solve the seller's problems, you will buy the house. And so when it comes to extracting the pain points, that does sometimes, they just will tell you the pain points, but you also have to be good at extracting those, because sometimes they hold those close to their chest.
Because you're kind of wanting to know, like, hey, if we accomplish A, B, C, and D, will you be willing to sell me the house?
Well, that's why I already set. Yeah. That's why at the very beginning, we're setting the rules.
Yeah.
Where it's like, hey, if I can fulfill on everything that you need, like, are you willing to sell your house today? Because now I'm going to extract the pain points, and then I'm going to tell them how I can solve those problems. And then technically, based upon the rules, they're supposed to sell me the house.
Yeah. So otherwise they would be breaking the rules.
Exactly. And people love to follow rules. People are rule followers. And so you're kind of setting that agenda already. And so with the pain points, there's a couple really great questions I love to ask to extract these pain points. And so there's 2 that get people talking a lot. So the first one would be, you're walking a house and the seller has seemingly really low motivation, where they don't seem like they're in financial distress. The house isn't in that bad a shape. You can't figure out like, why did this person call me and want to sell it? And so, but there's a reason they called, that there's a reason they called, you just can't figure it out. And so one of the things that I love to ask without just like, what are your pain points is, let's say I'm walking your house and I'm like, it's not really that, there's not a ton like wrong with it.
Yeah.
It is older, but there's not a ton wrong with it. He seems like he's in a healthy position financially. I would say something like along the lines of, hey, Spencer, you called me here and obviously you called me because you want to sell your house, but as I'm walking it and as I'm talking with you, it doesn't seem like you need to sell your house. So can I ask you a question? If you were to sell your house, why would you? And so immediately that opens up the door. Well, yeah, I don't need to, but I want to sell it because of X, Y, and Z. I want to sell it because I want to buy a van and drive across the United States, or I want to sell it because my wife wants to move here. And so it immediately starts opening.
It's like a neutral way to get them talking about their motivation to sell.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And then on the reverse side, with somebody with seemingly really high motivation, you're walking it, there's animal feces all over the house. It's trash. They've hoarded stuff for the last 40 years. They're in a really bad financial spot. I want to still like, there's a ton of motivation, but I want to extract like, what would keep me from buying this house?
Yeah.
And so I'll say the exact same question of like, hey, after talking with you, obviously there's a lot going on in your life and there's a lot of reasons that you need to sell this house, but can I ask you why wouldn't you sell it?
Yeah.
And then immediately that opens up the door to, well, I wouldn't sell it because I don't know where I'm going to go, or I wouldn't sell it because I don't know what I'm going to do with all of this stuff, or I wouldn't sell it because I have a bunch of stuff that I don't know what to do with, but I want to keep. And so like immediately as they're talking, I'm like, well, I could pay for your 6 months rent at a new place, or I could get a storage facility for you and hire movers to move everything into there. Or you can leave the house exactly as it is. We're going to fix it up. And so like, I'm able to hear what they're saying by extracting those pain points and then really quickly solve for them.
That's so good. That's awesome. It's so cool. Like, we kind of have this thing that's a process. Actually, we learned this from Jeremy Miner. We paid $18,000 to learn some of his sales stuff, which he's really, really, really good with sales. But the way we kind of do this is if we're in a conversation with somebody and they're not really like going straight into their pain points, then kind of lead into a question. So like, say this is with an entrepreneur wants to grow their business, since it's like fairly easy to relate that to this conversation. It's like, hey, so James, it seems like things are going fairly well in your business, I guess. Why, is there anything else that needs to change about it?
Yeah.
It's like, it seems like things are going super well. What would you change about what's currently happening? And then now they're like, cause sometimes people don't necessarily want to give you their problems or pain points. Or
but you give them permission now.
Yeah. And I think it's like, we're scared of that being taken advantage of. Like, I don't want to lose the upper hand in this dialogue and have you feel like I'm the needy girlfriend that needs you to, to give me something. It's like, I want to maintain like, hey, I could sell it or not. And so I'm not going to give away the details. I've gone into that with like Craigslist stuff. Yeah. It's like anytime someone's like, you're negotiating for a surfboard or something.
Yeah.
I don't want you to know, like, I need a surfboard. I'm going to point in the cracks and I'm going to try and get the price down on it. Cause like, I don't want you to know how bad I need this board or want the board.
Yeah.
And that way you don't charge me the full 1,000. Like we can get it down to 800. And that's like self-protectors people have. So there's little moments where you can kind of like show your cards and also almost be like, hey, it doesn't seem like you need to sell this. Why would you?
Yeah.
It gives them permission to be like, oh, he's not like trying to like hoodwink me into, getting me all these pain points. I can actually share.
Exactly. Yeah. It's nice. It's so much better than just being like, tell me about your pain points, or why do you have to sell? Why do you have to sell? Why do you have to sell? Because they don't want it, but just changing your verbiage a little bit into that question of, hey, it doesn't seem like you need to sell.
Yeah.
So if you were to sell, why would you?
You are really good at removing sales resistance, I've noticed. Cause like you really want things to be anti-sales.
Yeah.
Remember, we've talked about this many times. You know, it's why we've made our process the way we have with real estate investors, and why like nobody gets upset at us whatsoever, because it's a very conversational exchange. But I think that's important. A lot of people going into sales are like, and like hit all these different things. But I do think it's important to like communicate with people in a way that it doesn't bring out their triggers. Yeah. Of like, oh, I'm being sold. Nobody wants to be sold. Yeah. You know, they want to be like in charge and in control of themselves and powerful. Yeah. I think that's an awesome way you do it. It's cool.
Yeah. And I think that with this, it's so important to just like sit in for a little bit when it comes to pain points, is because if you can figure those out, you're going to buy the house.
That's the sale.
Yeah, that is the sale. And
pain is the sale.
And you've already set the rules and expectations. And so now you're trying to figure out what are the things that I have to solve for, and how can I solve them? And there are going to be times where you just can't solve for the problems, and the house isn't yours. But if you can solve for them, the house is yours. And one of the things that I tell people every single time, and I tell our team, when we're dealing direct to seller, what a lot of people do, I think this is actually interesting that we do that not a lot of people do, is they're asking, like on the initial phone call, what do you want for your house? We don't do that. We don't ask them what they want for the house, because you're setting an unrealistic price. Because if I asked you right now, Spencer, what do you want for your house?
You're going $500K above.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to say, I want, you know, 3.5 or 4 million. I don't know. I want 4 million. You're going to say, and then all of a sudden there is a price anchor out there that has been set.
It's in my head. That's all I'm thinking about now.
Yeah. And then if we say, okay, we'll come and walk it, you're like in the back, oh, we're probably going to pay $4 million. We would never pay $4 million for your house. Or
you're setting me up for disappointment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I also think that with a lot of the people that we deal with, money is not the number one issue. And so what I tell all of my people and anybody that's asking me about sales training is they will, when you're uncovering pain points, they will tell you how much money they need, or they will tell you how much money they need to walk away with in that conversation. If you're good at uncovering pain points, they'll straight up say like, I need $180,000. I need to walk away with $180,000 so I can go buy a new house, or I need to sell this for $350,000 because I owe $300 on it and I have $50,000 in credit card debt that I need to pay off. And so if money is an important problem for them that you need to solve, they're going to tell you that. If it's not an important problem, they're not going to bring it up, because a lot of times it's not. A lot of times I've told this story on this before, where a guy called me. His dad had passed away. He lived in Vegas. I think he had a lot of trauma around the house. And this was before I kind of started using this process. And I asked him, what do you want for the house? And he's like, I don't care. He's like, if you can make me never have to come back to St. Louis, the house is yours. And so, because he didn't want to come back. He didn't want to remove all the junk. He didn't want to clean it. He didn't want to get it set up. And that was really easy, a problem for me to solve, where I went and walked it, and I called him and I made him an offer, and he said yes without even thinking about it. And I was able to line up a mobile notary. He never had to step foot in Missouri. He was able to sell it from Vegas, and that was his problem that he wanted solved.
It's pretty awesome.
And there's a lot of people like that, where we're dealing with a deal right now that we're going to buy, and we're buying it for really cheap, and we're giving the person that lives there 6 months of free rent. That was his big thing, is like, I want the cash to be able to go look for another house, but he's pretty picky about what house that is. So, but he wants the cash, but then he wants to have a place to stay for 6 months.
Yeah.
So we're doing a hold back. There's going to be money held in escrow to just make sure that he does move out in 6 months. But now he'll have $130,000 to go put a down payment on another house, and he has 6 months to find that house. And so that cool. for him, that was the problem, where it's like, I want to buy a house, but I don't have the money to buy a house because all my money is tied up in this house. And so I want to sell it, have a place to stay for 6 months while I go look for another house.
So those were all factored into the terms of the purchase.
Yeah. So awesome. So we bought the house, or we're buying the house, and we're essentially we lowered the price on it to where, which for honestly, that was huge for him. He wanted to live for free, where I'm like, okay, we charge you $2,000 a month. So we're just going to lower the price $12,000, so super easy. Really easy for that. And then we are holding money in an escrow account that was just put into terms of that he gets upon leaving, just to make sure that he does leave in 6 months. Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. Do you feel like people, like investors, whether it's them or someone's doing cold calling for them or something like that, direct to seller, you think they're asking that question, like how much money you want for it,
all the time,
to like expedite the process because they don't want to go through the work it takes to actually buy the home, or like they don't want to like have a tire kicker and go through those? Are they trying to like eliminate process and pain?
Yes. So the reason that I asked that question was because I work with anywhere at about an hour radius from my house. And so I didn't want to drive an hour to an appointment only to find out they're wanting $100,000 over retail, and this wasn't even a legitimate conversation.
Yeah.
But I think that problem can be solved when you're establishing the rules and expectations. Cause that I do on the phone. Where it's like, do you want to sell your house? Like I buy houses for a living. And so like, I'm coming there to buy your house. And so if we can solve all of your problems, are you ready to sell your house? And then if it's not a realistic, well, it's like, yeah, I'll sell it, but you have to give me my dream number or something like that. Then you can start having the conversation of, oh, okay, you're not really serious about selling your house. And then maybe I would weed that out of actually going on the appointment. Right. Or sometimes they're like, I sell it, but I need X amount. And then I can tell them hey, just really quickly looking at this, I'm going to be way under that. So
it's like trying to buy someone's dream home. They already live in it. It's like, I already live in my dream home. It's going to be hard to buy a home from somebody that's already living in their dream home. Right. Cause it's like, I would like to buy your home. You like to buy my home. What is my dream home? So fine. 5 million.
Exactly.
It's like, well, there's no pain points to like actually extract from that. So I'm like, I have none. I love this place.
Exactly.
You want to buy it, it's gonna be too much.
And so I think that you can weed without asking the price, you can weed out who is legitimate and who is not by just establishing rules and expectations.
That makes sense.
And so, but there are definitely times where we get to the end of the process and I give them a number and they're unrealistic, and it's like, well, I didn't waste my time because I still got to go meet somebody and have a good conversation and help them out. Hopefully, it was still worth the at bat though. But and I think that's a huge point. Is like you're giving yourself more of a chance than trying to weed out people, because immediately when you say, we've already talked about this, but when I ask, what do you want for the house? Everybody's going to say the highest number they can imagine.
Yeah.
When I was asking that question, there was probably 2 times out of 1,000 where they would actually say a number reasonable. Where I'm like, oh, I'll buy it at that. It was typically something that was nowhere near then. And then I had to negotiate against that price anchor.
Here's what I think about it. Like good sales, if I'm having sales conversations, I might be giving a full hour away to a sales conversation. Mm-hmm. But if I have 5 of those a day and I convert 20%, that means I'm going to have a sale a day, giving away an hour at each one of those conversations, which, 20% of that. Let's say I try and save time and do less sales conversations. So on the front end, I do a lot of friction where it's like, hey, what do you want to sell it for? Yeah. Right. I'm trying to like expedite it. But let's say I only close 1 out of 400 of those because people get so triggered and say like, this is my number. And then you can't go through any of the process. So it's like 1 out of 400 where I'm like, that ends up being net. You spent more time and get less results. Yeah. So it's like you kind of have to invest your time in the process of doing it right to get results. And you can't think about it like a scarcity of time mentality.
No, not at all. Not at all. And so, the not asking the prices is a huge thought in our business where we will find out the price if we do the other things correctly. They will tell us what they want for it, or they won't. And then to them, price isn't that big of a deal. Yeah. And so from there, we've extracted pain points, and then we're going to go back to establishing the rules and expectations. We actually visit that multiple times throughout the entire process, where we would say, okay, so what I'm hearing from you is you really want to sell your house and you want to close in 2 weeks, and you want to have a moving company help you move all of your stuff from here to Tennessee. Like, those are things that you're stressed out about, you're worried about, and then you don't want to have to fix anything up. And just to be clear, is that kind of what you're hoping for here? And, they'll say yes. And I'm saying, and if you can get that, you're ready to sell your house. And so I'm, again, establishing like those rules and expectations. And I haven't told them yet that, hey, I can do X, Y, and Z, but I'm just, in the back of my head, I know that I can.
You're warming them up to the
exactly.
close.
So I'm reestablishing. So like, if we can do these things, you're ready to sell your house today. So I'm reestablishing the rules, the expectations, going over their pain points, and then it's time to make the offer. Okay. So you've done that. You've reestablished the rules and expectations. You have went through the pain points, and now it's time to make an offer. And
what was how did you pitch that recently? Like when you made a recent offer?
When I made with a recent offer. So when it's direct to seller, one of the things that I would say is like, hey, so I usually step out to my car to put together numbers, and which I haven't been on a lot of direct to seller calls in the last year because I'm here. Okay. Well, I'm here and acquisition.
You have acquisition managers and stuff.
Yeah, but they're going on those. But what I would do is I go out to my car and I'd come in and I would say, hey, you seemed like you were really worried about just having to fix things up in the house. Well, you don't have to worry about that at all. We're going to take care of all of it. You don't have to worry about, you can pack a suitcase and
leave. Start satisfying the pain points.
Exactly. And another thing that you said was, there is some stuff that you like, this is a perfect example. It was a really sweet lady who was moving into a senior living facility, but it was only 700 square feet. Her house that she was living in was 2,000, and she wanted to store all of that stuff. And so, but she also didn't know how to move it over to the place. And I said, so, and also that's an issue for you. And I'm going to hire you movers, and I'll pay for, you can pick the place that you want it stored at, and I'll pay for the first 3 months of that. And so like, that's now satisfied. And if it was, I want to close in 2 weeks. And another thing that we can do is we'll close in 2 weeks on this, and it's going to be a cash offer, and whatever we offer, like that's what you're walking away with, because I'm going to pay your closing costs on it. And then on top of all of that, I would present just, hey, our offer doesn't have any contingencies in it. You can see like right here where I've said that there's no contingencies. What that means is I can't back out of the contract. And if I do, I've never backed out of a contract before. If I do though, I want you to sue me, because that's not something that I do. And at times I will, depending on like if they're looking at other people or talking to other people, I will scorch the earth a little bit.
Okay. Well, I was just going to say like, so what if you're making that offer to me and I go, I just got 3 other offers that were higher than that.
Yeah. So I'm happy to point people to a better offer, that a better number than me if the contract is the same. So
contingencies.
Yeah. So like, I will scorch the earth.
Yeah.
Where I'm basically when I'm going over our contract, like this right here, it means there's no contingencies. That means that what we're offering you can take to the bank. You know that we're going to close on it. There's no way that we won't close on it. And if you have anybody that writes in contingencies, what I see a lot of times is they're going to go and shop it around, or they're going to wait until you get committed and you started moving stuff and packing stuff, and they're going to come back and try and renegotiate the price down. And I just don't want that to happen to you. And so like having that conversation with them of what a good contract looks like. And I also a lot of times will try and present myself of like building so much trust, like, let me look at the contracts. So I'm happy to point you in the right direction, even if it's not me. And there's been multiple times where it's like, I've known the other person that's got an offer and they're 10 grand higher than me. I'm like, I know this person. I trust this person. their contract's the same as mine, but they're offering more. I would go with them. And so, happy to
Have
point them.
Have people gone with you just because
yes, 100%. Yeah, for sure.
Because you said that.
Yeah. Where it's like, oh, I'd just rather go with you. Like, I appreciate that. So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And I think it's good. Like for me, I can sleep at night cause I do know that.
Would you ever match someone's contract like that?
For sure.
So like, if you're like, they offer me this, you're like, I know them, they're great. I'm willing to match it.
So that's one of the reasons that I asked for that. Actually, we used to do this thing and we've went away from it just because it wasn't giving us enough deals to make it worth it. But I used to tell everybody like, hey, if you have a contract that's better than our offer, I will give you $100 gas card. And really the whole purpose with that was so I could see all of the contracts that somebody would be like, hey, I got another offer. I'm like, oh, cool. Send it over my way. Let me check it out. And then most of the time what I would see though on those was offer that was better in price, but it was filled with contingencies and it was contingent upon financing. It was contingent upon a partner approval period, which is really just another way of saying shopping it without saying it. And so then
they're gonna get a GP or whatever.
Yeah, they're gonna bring in people to wholesale it too. They're their partners, and so they have all of these. And so then I'm able to like scorch the earth with it. Well, this isn't really a better contract than mine. It's a higher number, but my fear is that they actually don't pay you the number that they have on that because there's contingencies in there.
Right.
And so that was a way for me to get to see all of the offers and be able to talk them through it and still point them in my direction. And, or if there was another offer on the table that was as good as mine, like the contract was as good, but it was a higher number, I had the opportunity to match it.
Yeah.
Where I'd be like, hey, this is a really great offer and the contract looks really good. And honestly, I wouldn't steer you away from this contract, but what I can do is I can match it.
Yeah.
If that would mean anything to you. And so able to buy a house that way. And one of the things that I use a lot is personal stories to get a point across.
Yeah.
So like for instance, and this is a story that I use a lot and it's because it infuriates me and I've seen it happen multiple times. But for instance, they have a higher offer, but there's a contingency in the contract. And I would say, hey, Spencer, like, let's say that's you. Like you are like, hey, Cameron, I've got an offer for 40 grand higher. And I look at it and there's a contingency in there and I'm trying to scorch the earth and tell you it's not going to close. I would usually say, hey, can I tell you a story of another time that this happened? And I would, well, actually, I'll just do it. I would say, hey, so Spencer, I was dealing with this really great lady. Her name was Julie. And
I remember this story too.
Yeah.
But keep going.
Well, yeah. And I came in and I offered her $150,000 for her house. And she really liked the offer, but she got another offer for $180,000. And it was from an out-of-state buyer. They never came and walked the house. They never looked at the house. And in the contract, there was a contingency period, but she really wanted that $180,000. And I talked with her about it. I told her I didn't think it was a legitimate offer, but I completely understand because $30,000 is a lot of money. And so she decided to go with that person. And a month later, she called me at the closing table asking me if I could buy the house because the buyer that was supposed to close on it that day had called her and said that he wasn't going to buy it unless she could sell it to him for, $110,000 or something ridiculous under that. And that would be my fear of you going with a contract like this is this person is just trying to take advantage of you, trying to get you pot committed and make you start packing up your moving stuff and, putting a down payment on another house or putting a security deposit on a rental property and getting you committed. And then they're just going to try and lower the price or renegotiate. Or they're just going to back out
from her again.
Because we'd already had a bunch of houses going on and
you didn't have like the capital to,
Yeah. So like I would use a personal story like that, which I've seen happen a ton of times. That exact story has happened multiple times.
So she had to sell it for that.
Yeah.
She had already set up everything.
Yes. And I don't remember the exact number that she sold. It was for less than my original offer, but for way less.
Yeah.
Where he went in there and she had no other option but to agree to it because she had already set up her life for selling that house. She needed the money to close on another property. And so like I've seen that happen.
So
another
douchey.
Yeah, it is. And another personal story that I use a lot would be where the house is distressed and you're like, well, I think I'm just going to fix it up and list it myself. And I'd say like, hey, can I tell you a story about another client that I was working with that did the same exact thing? And like, we have a team so we can get in here really quick and we can cut our expenses by having the same team and knowing what we're doing versus you're going to go to somebody that is going to charge you way more for it. And it's going to be a headache. And you're going to have to manage the rehab project. And for us, this would take 3 months, but for somebody that doesn't know what they're doing, it could take 6 months or longer. And this happened with another client where they decided to rehab their house. And a year later, they had gone through multiple contractors and spent a ton of money and hadn't really gotten anywhere. And he called me and he asked me if I'd buy his house for the same price that I'd offered him a year later after spending a bunch of money trying to fix it up. And so just trying to like use like a personal story of hey,
because that's legit.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. All of the time where people think that they can rehab a house. And if they don't have any experience, rehabbing a house is so hard and dealing with contractors is so hard. And
contractors aren't trying to make you money. Contractors are trying to make money on the rehab.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So they're not thinking about cutting costs, expenses, saving you money. They're like, what's the market value for a rehab? Right.
Yeah. So, and then a lot of times the sellers don't know like what's the color scheme that we need and so they don't have any of that experience and they're trying to sell for full retail value and do it themselves, which makes sense because that's always going to be the seller's way to make the most money.
Yeah.
Is fixing, if you know what you're doing is fix the house up yourself and sell it for full retail. Because that's essentially what I'm going to be doing. And so I have to work in a profit. So that's how they make their most money.
You need capital for that. Mm-hmm. And you need to know what you're doing.
You need capital. You need to know what you're doing. So I'm going to tell them a personal story about why that doesn't really work. And so I'm just handling objections and that process, typically using personal stories.
That's awesome, dude. That's so good.
Yeah. But then it comes to, making the offer. And one of the things that I say with making an offer is, and again, why I never ask for the price is because I want to be the one that sets the price anchor. If they never say anything about the price, I want to be the one that sets that. So typically I will have my price that I have in my head, and then I'll throw out something. And this is true, so I'm not just lying to them. But like, hey, I know other investors that would probably buy this house for, and I'll typically say something like $30,000 less than where I'm going to be at. Or let's say I'm offering 150. I'm like, hey, I'm in the investing world. I know a lot of investors. They'd probably be around 120 on this. And then I'm just going to sit and I'm going to wait.
Let them be super upset at the number.
Yes. And I'm going to let you respond, especially if I don't know your price yet, because I've never asked you and it wasn't uncovered in the pain points. When I say that number, you're immediately going to respond with where you really need me to be at.
Because I might even be like, okay, let's do it.
Yeah. And if you did that, I'd be like, well, I can't do that to you. I'm going to pay higher than that. So I'm still going to come back and pay higher than that, but
you won't be like opportunistic and be
I usually have my number.
This is where you're talking about having ethics with it.
Yeah.
You're like, I know if I did that, I'd be screwing the person over.
Yeah. I've got my number. There's been multiple times, not multiple times, but there's been at least twice where they have given me their number and I'm like, I'm gonna pay you way more than that. And so that's
cool.
Yeah, that's happened before. But in that scenario, typically I would say something like that and then I would wait and I would let it get awkward and I'd let you say something first of like, I can't do 120, but I can do 160. So now there's the price anchor of like, well, maybe I'm at 150 on that. Well, I can't do 160, but we're really close. Do you think we could do 150? And so,
yeah.
But instead of asking at the very beginning when they say 250, and then I'm having to negotiate down $100,000, I'm only having to negotiate down $10,000. And so that's a really great tip. What's
the funniest response you've heard?
Oh, I get the fuck out of here.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like a lot of cuss words. And that's why I always soften the blow with a really low price anchor too. So then when I say, cause my offer is still going to be low. Yeah. Like I'm buying a distressed house off market and I'm trying to turn around and make money on it. So my offer is still going to be low, but I've almost pushed their anger off on other investors. Whereas like, I know other investors that would be here for that. I'm going to be higher than that. And so now they're angry at the other investors and not me, even with that. So, but that's, I'm always going to throw out a low price anchor and blame it on other investors. And then I'm going to sit there and I'm going to wait, because you're going to tell me where I need to be at after that. You're going to. So
someone would be like, get the F out of here. You'd be like, well, that's what I was saying. Other investors.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's like other investors.
I would go actually a little higher. You may not like it, but
exactly.
Be closer to this.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay. So and again, like I'm not saying that that's where I'd be at, but what were you thinking?
What were you thinking?
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
And so then they're going to give you a more realistic number, or say like that's not even what I owe, or that won't even pay off my mortgage on it. Or and like, okay, what's your mortgage? Where would you need me to be? And they're going to just be a lot more open and honest when you set that low price anchor and you blame it on other people.
That's cool. Man, this is a super valuable, like piece of content. I feel like this podcast, like if you guys listening to this or watching this aren't getting a lot out of it, like this is pretty granular and detailed. It's
granular and it's tough too, because every seller's different. So like this is the process, but and you always try and steer them back to the process, but then there's going to be things where
so many nuances.
I kind of like it, but let me think it over. And how do you handle that? Which for us, we have tips for handling that, which would be, I create some sort of exclusivity around that offer where it's like, you can wait as long as you want. I love this house, but the market's changing all the time. And I can't guarantee you if you call me back that I'd still be at the same price.
Yeah.
Or I would set exclusivity around the offer of saying, hey, I buy a lot of houses and I only have a certain amount of capital allocated to buy houses. And I've got another 2 appointments today, 3 more tomorrow. And what would really make me sad, because I love your house so much and I really want to buy it, is if I left here and I bought other houses and I spent all the capital that I have and you called me back and said you're ready to sell and I couldn't buy it. And so I'm just trying to create some sort of urgency around my offer when they say, hey, can I think it over? Can I wait?
And that story too is almost the same. The one with that Jules or Julie or whatever, the one you just shared. Yeah. It's almost the same thing right there. We were like, she came back and I didn't have capital to allocate towards it.
Yeah. So setting up some sort of exclusivity around that. And then another thing that I love to do just when it comes to making an offer is I love to basically, if we're close, but we need a little bit more, I love to pit, I guess, me and the seller. Like I'm team seller and I'm pitting them against my partner, which is Lexi, but of something along the lines of like, my partner says that, because I want them to love me, because they want to. So I want to blame everything, like
everybody else.
Yes, my partner says that, hey, I have to be here. I can't go up at all. And I'm gonna, and I'll even tell them like I'm gonna fight for it. Where do you need me to be at? Like I can go back and I can call them, but I need to know where you need me to be at. And so that again, like I'm team seller, and they're going to be honest with me. Where it's like, I need to, let's say I'm in at 150, like I really need to be at 160, and they're open and honest because I'm team seller and I'm going to try and go get the extra 10 grand from my partner. And another great tactic, going back to rules and expectations, would be, I like to do that. And then I also, if they say like, let's use this for example, they say 160. And I probably wouldn't call Lexi. I would call Josh and be like, hey, can we rerun the numbers on this? Is there any way we can get to 160? One of the things that I would say to the seller of like, hey, I don't want to go to them and tell them we need to be at 160 and like fight them to get there and then come back and you can't sell it at 160. So if I go call my partner right now and I can get to 160, are you ready to sell your house? And they're gonna be like, well, not really. I still don't know if I'd want to. And then I'd say, well, I still think we'd probably be at 150, because I don't want them to just keep edging me, because I've done that too many times where it's like, okay, well, I call them 160. Well, I really want 165. Okay, let me go make another call. Well, we can't get to 165. We're at 162. Oh, well, I need 164. Okay, let me go make another call. We can come to 163, because then I've just cost myself 13 grand. Yeah. Versus hey, I'm just going to stay where I'm at, or I'm going to get to your number. But if I get to your number, I need to know that you will sign the contract. Yeah. So
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
If you had, because we're coming to an end here, because
yeah. Oh.
I mean, it's good though. Long day today.
It has been a long day. It's been a long day. I could talk about real estate for a long time.
I wanted to ask though, if you had 10 hours to talk about deal negotiation, what are some of the things that you would discuss that we obviously don't have time for?
Oh, I mean, I love talking about the disc.
Yeah.
I think that's just such a valuable tool to read people. So one of the things that when I talk about the disc, and I love this terminology, is there is the golden rule. What's the golden rule?
Treat people like you want to be treated.
Yes. I think that's a stupid rule. It says it in the Bible, doesn't it? Does it say is the golden rule in the Bible?
Love your neighbor as yourself.
As yourself. Yeah, I guess. Okay. So if it's a verse in the Bible, I take it back. It's not a stupid rule, but
stupid rule.
Yeah.
God.
But no, here's what I mean by that is I think there's a better rule, and that is treat other people the way they want to be treated.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is like, I talk about me and my wife. I love people. I could go out on the town every single night, hang out with people, and be out till 1 a.m, just hanging out, having a good time every single night. I don't get tired of that. I love conferences, events, masterminds, because I just love being around people.
Yeah. And
if I treated Lexi that way, because that's how I want to be treated, of like every night we're going to go out and we're going to, she would leave me because she wants time at home. She wants to watch a movie and snuggle on the couch. And so I have to treat her the way that she wants to be treated.
Yes.
And it's the same way with negotiating with people. You don't negotiate with others the way that you want to be negotiated with. You negotiate with others the way that they want to be negotiated with. So for instance, like let's talk about me. For example, the way that I want to be negotiated with is I don't want you to sell me. I want you to be my friend. Like I want to feel like I could go have a beer with you. I want to talk about the St. Louis Cardinals. I want to talk about the travel. I want to talk about your family. Like I want to just get to know you. And if I know, like, and trust you, I'm going to sell my house or buy something for you. If I just feel that, have that trust built up because we're friends.
Yep.
Versus if you try to do that with a high C, like on the disc where you were I'm trying to become a high C's best friend. High C's don't care about being your best friend. Yeah. They're analytical people. Yeah. And so if you negotiate if I went into a conversation with a high C, a very analytical person, and I tried to negotiate with them the way that I would want to be negotiated with, they would hate me. They'd be like, this guy's obnoxious. He won't stop talking. He'd talk about the house at all.
He's dancing around the facts.
Exactly.
Dancing around the details I need.
Exactly. And so I love talking about the disc because I think that you can really quickly read somebody after you've got enough reps. That's probably something you could
talk a lot about too, is like how to read
how to read them. Like even from their handshake, from the way that they dress, from their eye contact, all of that, from their smile. All of that's going to play a part into how I interact with them. And so, and all that's going to lead to me potentially buying the house, because with a high I, again, that's, and really quickly you can spot the high I's because they're friendly. They've got the big smile. They've got the warm handshake. They're chatty, and that's a high I. Really quickly you can spot a high C because they might not even do a handshake. They avoid eye contact. They're quick, one-word answers. Really quickly you can determine a high D because they've got the power handshake, and they want to, they'll talk about themselves. And so there's just tips and tricks of even like the way that their house is decorated. High Ds are going to have pictures that bring them like, that stroke their ego a little bit. Like they're going to have their diplomas or pictures of them with cool people. High I's are going to be just fun. It's going to be a more fun household. High S's are going to have houses that are filled with family. Yeah. So like a high S, one way to spot one immediately is you look in one of their, a door, and you see their kids growing up, and they're taking, like, that's a high S, where it's like sentimental, family oriented. And typically high S's have lived in their house for 30 or 40 years. And that's where they raise their family at.
Yeah.
Where with the high I, a lot of times they've been in the house for 3 years, you know. So
I remember watching the videos because I was doing some of the editing for the course part for like the mastermind for Deal Flow. Like just there's so much content there just for negotiation too.
Yeah. Like, and it's fun. And it's also, I mean, if you want to be the best, like you have to learn these things.
It's repetition. Like, okay, what do I need to learn? Like what did I do wrong on that one? Let me go back to that training. It's like you need to be almost watching the films, you know, like teams do. I don't know why I got like stuck on that.
Training film or training films, whatever.
Like football teams, like watch the film. Oh, here's how we messed up that play. Here's what we got to go back to and train that again. Yeah.
So I love talking about the disc because I think it's awesome. A really, and not only just with buying houses, but in every aspect of life, it's super valuable and transferable.
It's awesome. So, sales is awesome. I think sales is, every person should learn it to some degree. You know, it's the art of influence, right? It's like, even people get on stage, you're selling an idea. If you're meeting people, you're selling yourself. You're going on dates, you're definitely selling yourself, you know? And I just think it's such a valuable skill to learn interpersonal communication and how to love people well. Yeah. Honestly, like in business, you're trying to facilitate a transaction. Like you're saying, it fulfills the interests of both sides. Yeah. You know, on our side, we're trying to make money. On your side, you need a service or a product or something like that. I think it's such a valuable skill. So I think the fact that you teach it the way that you do, it's so important. It's awesome. Yeah. But I know we're we're way over time. Thank you guys for watching, listening to the episode today. Obviously, if you guys are wanting to learn more about Deal Flow, what Cameron's doing, how he's training investors and helping them grow and scale. Scroll and Gale, their real estate businesses. You can check out dealflowrealestate.com and all the free stuff, or you can book a call with the team and see if we can help. But thanks for giving your time and attention.
Thank you for watching, guys.
And we'll see you next time.
Blast.
Later.
Boom.